Hello. This is Brian K. McNeill, the Sales Confidence Coach, and here we are again for another Sales Confidence podcast. Whoop, 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 and we're going to get it in today. The question is, to close or not to close? That is the question. To close the sale or not to close the sale? That is the question. Now, again, my name is Brian K. McNeill, and I've been helping people to sell themselves and their services better for 29 years. I've been in the industry for 30 years. Yes, I have. I started professional sales at age 23. I'm 53 now. And for another 16 days, I'll be 53 because then I'll turn 54. But anyway, I want to talk about this concept of to close the sale or not. Now, first, let's define what is a close. Now, the way I define a close is any direct attempt to get money in exchange for what you're offering. That's what I call the close. The direct attempt to get the money in exchange for the offer. This is a very singular function. It's not prospecting. It's not presenting. This is just the act of closing the sale, that time and that purpose of just getting money in exchange for it. Now, I define there's a lot of things that entrepreneurs and salespeople can do during the course of a day that don't earn them money. I define there's only about 6 activities that we do that actually earn us money. One is prospecting, the other is presenting, another one is closing, another is following up, another one is delivering or studying. That's about it. The 6 things. Everything else is preparing you to go to work. I remember when I first heard this concept of closing or not. It came from a book called Hardball Selling by a guy named Robert L. Shook, and I read it in the early 90s. And Robert L. Shook, he had this thought about it might seem like you're damned if you do or damned if you don't. If you do go ahead and try to close the sale, you risk how the client might feel. If you don't try to close the sale, you risk not getting the business and the client's not getting the benefits. So he felt like a lot of people might think it's damned if you do or damned if you don't. And he surmised, and I agree, that you're only damned if you don't. Whenever you believe the client has enough information to make a decision, a yes or no decision, you owe it to the client as well as yourself to attempt to close the sale. Yes, you should close the sale. You should ask for and attempt to get the business. Now, asking for the business is the first part of closing the sale, but it's not the only part. Asking for the business, will you give my services a try? Can we move forward? Can we earn your business? Will you give me some money so we can get started? Will you give me some more information? Any of those words is the first part of the close. But to close today, there is a thing called objections. Now, overcoming objections seems to be a lost art in the profession of selling services. It seems like people don't even try to overcome objections anymore. And I'm basing that upon the experience I have with the people that come to me, with the workshops that I give, with the Q&A, the things that people say. They offer it, if they even offer it at all. That's the first part. If they even offer it at all, if there's a little bit of resistance from the clients, the game is typically over. So now, so to close or not to close, I'm going to say to you firmly that you must, M-U-S-T, attempt to close the sale, and you must, M-U-S-T, attempt to overcome objections. Yes, you must do that. You owe it to them. Now think about it. If the service that you're offering was really good, if the service that you're offering really did help the people, don't you owe it to them to motivate them to take an action that is in their best interest? I consider selling services today as an act of motivation. It's not transactional as it used to be. You're motivating people to take an action. So you can even say that you're a motivator instead of sales. You're motivating people to take an action. So now we're going to talk about closing the sale and overcoming the sale. Now, there's a thing that you get. There's a difference between an objection and a condition. An objection versus a condition. An objection is an excuse for not hiring you, an excuse for not buying what you're offering right now. That's called an objection, an excuse. A condition is a valid reason why they cannot move forward. That's a condition. Okay. Now, this is one of the few times that you're going to see a sales coach use an absolute term. The absolute term I'm going to use right now is called all. All objections, all of the excuses for not buying can and should be overcome by you, my entrepreneurial friend. If you're offering it to them, you can overcome the objection. You should attempt to close. If you will not close, for whatever reason, if you won't even attempt to close, let's say you're talking to someone that has needs for what you offer. They need what you offer and they agree they need. And you presented it to them and they said, well, let me think about it. And you say, sure, no problem. Take all the time you need and leave. The moment that you separate their presence, hear me now, they like you less. Why do they like you less? I left them laughing. We were friends. Why do they like me less? Because they had a need and you didn't even try to fix their need. You only, I call it, you only made fun of their bad situation. You only picked at their problem. You didn't try to close the sale right then. You should, when that moment comes, attempt to ask for the business and close the sale. The first way I want you to know how to close the sale is simply just to ask, will you give my services a try? That's what I recommend you do. You ask them, would you give us a try? Would you give my services a try? Now, if they give you an objection, an excuse for not buying right now, you should attempt to overcome the objection. From industry to industry to industry, you only get maybe 3 objections per industry, maybe 4. You get money as an objection, can't afford it, costs too much. You get some sort of a stall. Let me think about it. I'll do it later. You get some sort of a stall. Or you get one other objection. It could be time. We don't have time to fully implement this, or you don't have the color. But those are menial, okay? In your industry, you have what's called a demon. Your demon, to me, is the most common objection that you get. Now, if you know what your demon is, if you know what your most common objection is, you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your potential clients for you to learn how to address your demon before it comes up, how to handle the money objection. In this podcast, I'm only going to attack the one. How do you handle the money objection? Can't afford it, cost too much. That money objection. Okay, now to me, that's not really real, but I'm going to show you how I can handle that. And maybe you could pick up a tip or two. If I present to them and they say, I can't afford it, Brian, normally I would have addressed that ahead of time, but let me just handle it now. Can't afford it, Brian. It costs too much. Okay. Now, philosophically, before I address this, philosophically, as a personal policy, I never believe people when they say they can't afford my services. Even on my most expensive things, if they have no money in the bank, I choose not to believe that. Why would I choose that as a philosophy? Why would I choose that as a policy? It's because I know in the last 30 years of my personal experience, even if they have no money now, if they want it enough, they will find the money. So money objection to me is more a matter of whether they want it or not, or whether they want it enough. Because even if they had no money, if they wanted what you're offering, they will find the money. They will scratch around and find the money. They will find it out of this budget or that budget. They'll get it if they want it enough. Imagine one of your clients has no money at all. One of your potential clients has no money at all, and one of their friends offered them a trip to Acapulco. And the trip is leaving this weekend, and they have to come up with $500 to go on the trip, and we'll be gone for a week. If all they got to do is find the $500, even if they have no money, if they want a 1-week trip in McNeill or Acapulco, they will find the money. So the same thing with your services. If they want it, they will find the money for it. Most of the time, money is not the real objection. Money is an indicator that they're not yet sold. So you got a choice to make when they throw up the money issue. That you can either start all over and make sure there's enough of a want, or you could use a system. There's a lot of different selling ideologies, and one of my favorite ones is an ideology called hurt and rescue. Hurt and rescue. Don't let the title of this ideology throw you. Hurt and rescue. It's a 4-part process. To close or not to close is what we're talking about today. And I always recommend, if you believe they will be better off, you always go for the close. You always ask despite whatever they might say. So they have a need for my services. Their sales force is poor right now. The sales force has the blahs. Sales are down. Okay, going into the fourth quarter of the year, they really need a sales boost, but they're not selling well. Here I come to save the day. Brother Brian is on the way. So here's a 4-step process called the hurt and rescue method. Maybe you like it. Step 1 in the hurt and rescue method when you're attempting to close the sale or overcome a lame objection, like money. Step 1 is you uncover, in the hurt and rescue model, you uncover the problem that they had before you got there. You talk about the problem that they had before you got there. Note, you talk about the problem they had before you got there. You're not causing any problems. You only talk about the problems that's already been uncovered that they had before you even offer it. They knew about that problem before you even offered your services. That's a problem they already had. You talk about that problem briefly. How long has sales been this way? Okay, talk about it and let them feel it, but not for long. Then you talk about step 1 is you talk about the problem briefly. Step 2, you uncover the problem that's already there. Step 2 is you talk about that problem briefly. Step number 3 is you talk about how expensive it is for them to keep that problem. You uncover the problem that's already there. You talk about that problem briefly, ask a question about it, and then you talk about how expensive it is. If we don't resolve this issue, that means you get to keep this problem. And what is this problem costing you? Is it expensive to keep this problem? Expensive could be money wasted, money not yet earned. It could be aggravation. It could be wasting of time. But how expensive it is for them to keep that problem. And then step 4 is you rescue them with your services. Well, if you let me help you, you will no longer have this challenge. If you let me help you, throw out the life preserver. They're drowning, you throw out your life preserver, and you offer your solutions as a rescue, as a solution to the problem. To close or not to close. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I'm here to tell you, you're only damned if you don't. When you reach the position where you believe they understand what you have benefits them, you owe it to them to say and do what it takes to motivate them to take an action. One way to do that is to use the hurt and rescue method, uncover the problems that they're already having, talk about that problem briefly, talk about how expensive it is to stay in that problem, and rescue them with your services. I'm going to close here now and just say this. You owe it to your clients to close. You owe it to your potential clients to give them an opportunity to say no. That's the closing efforts. Will you give me money in exchange for this? You have to at least give them a chance to say no. Again, my name is Brian K. McNeill. I'm hopeful you found some value in these less than 15 minutes. 15-minute value on the Sales Confidence Course podcast. If you want to talk about this some more, reach out to me. I'm very easy to find. The quickest way is just through my website, briankmcneil.com. I do offer a selling your services consultation complimentary. Thanks a lot. I'll see you guys next Tuesday at 1 p.m.